politics because of money. There is easier and more money to be made in private sector or elsewhere. There is part of service, so salaries are something that I never look at. But Alberta trade offices are very interesting. I am a big proponent of having Alberta trade offices throughout the world. And I think we need to take a short look at them and see if we have them properly located strategically. Because, you know, it's very popular to be in China and India right now. And everybody is there. Everybody and their dog is there right now. And we're... Brian's dog. Yeah.
My dog's not going there.
But real strategy, you know, Wayne Gretzky always used to say, you want to be where the puck is going to be, not where the puck already is. And we haven't been very strategic on where the puck is going to be. We missed Central and Eastern Europe. That ship has sailed. US, Germany, and other countries are already in. There's no room to maneuver for us. But there is another frontier. Countries like Kazakhstan, for example, all the ex-stands of USSR. Some parts of Southeast Asia, Vietnam, where there isn't still a great deal of Western presence. Those are places that I think we should be looking at very carefully because we can develop some very good economic or academic strategic relationships. But, so that's relevant to location, but staffing is also very important. Those offices cannot be staffed with political appointments. We need those offices staffed with the expertise that you need for that market. So if I'm going to Kazakhstan and I know that one of the potentials in Kazakhstan is agriculture, I would want Alberta agrologists to be working in that office, who know the business, they know the market, but we have to go one step further. If possible, I would want Alberta agrologists who speak the language and know the culture of that country to work in that office. And that is our natural advantage, going back to the diversity of our population. We actually have experts in all fields that speak other languages and know other cultures. That's where we can have a natural advantage. And this is no slight to anyone who is currently working in those offices, but often their competencies, which are very high, may not be well matched to the job that we expect them to do.
Good answer.
Thank you. We're going to go Gabor and then Rob.
So this is a post-leadership campaign focused question. And just so you know, I put the same question to the candidate that appeared before you. And it's simply this. What would you say to those who would suggest that it's fundamentally unhealthy for democracy in general, and for Alberta in particular, to maintain in power for 47 uninterrupted years one political party, particularly when that party has recently betrayed the trust of the Alberta populace through fiscal mismanagement, lack of accountability, and the rest? Yep. What would you say to such a person?
What did he say?
I want to know. I'll tell you what he said. Yeah, it's no problem.
No, I'm kidding you. The reason I'm kidding is that we never got to debate each other yet, so I'm actually curious what it is that they're saying, because I imagine they're facing the same questions. But this is probably the first race, leadership race in the history of this province, where we haven't had a debate between the candidates who are running against each other. So I'm always curious what it is that they're saying.
What do you want to hear?
Sure, tell me later.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, because so this way you will get it. You will get spontaneous response. You know, it is rather unusual that in Alberta we have a government from one particular political party for now 43 years. But you have to ask yourself why. First of all, that government, the logo, or even frankly, the logo hasn't even changed. But the logo is the same. But this is a very different government today than what you had during Getty days and what you had during Premier Lougheed days. You know, I was 1 year old when Premier Lougheed assumed government. So we have changed. The party philosophy has changed. I imagine if Premier Lougheed was to assume this party right now, he would change it significantly. It's no longer the same party. So the party went through metamorphosis over time and adapted to what we thought Albertans wanted us to be. And you know, that is the success of our political party, that we have managed to morph ourselves over time into what Albertans wanted us to be. Because if we didn't, they wouldn't elect us. Because you know, at the end of the day, we do have free democratic elections. And we had some very viable oppositions. Election between Premier Ralph Klein and Lawrence Decor, 1986?
No, it was after.
93.
93.
Very good, yeah.
1993. Lawrence Decor, a very formidable opponent, put together quite a solid team of MLAs or candidates for MLAs, formed the opposition, didn't form government. So as long as we keep the tenets of democracy in this province, where Albertans actually get to choose and vote openly and freely, if it turns out to be the same party over and over again, that's your choice. You could change us in 18 months if you wish to do so. Now what I have to do is to change our party, and I got sanctioned once already for saying that, so I'll say it again. What I have to do is change our party, the structure of the party, and our government, so that I can convince you in 2016 that you want to vote for the same logo again. You know, it's like Calgary Flames or Edmonton Oilers. The jerseys are the same, but the players are different. The game style is different. It just happens to be the same team, and that's what Albertans were voting for. And we were relatively successful in adapting to the changes in Alberta. Albertans have changed. Alberta has changed significantly over time. And that is why I am so passionate, partly because of where I come from. My family, I left at 13 years old, a country where you didn't have a chance to vote. That's why I'm so passionate about democratic values, and that is why you've heard me make very cautiously comments about this particular leadership race. I want you to have all the information available to you. That's why I'm here. And I want you to be able to vote in an open process. And as a result of that, if you end up electing in 2016 yet again our party, then the system has worked. But we have to make sure that we have open, transparent, and fair leadership races. We have to make sure that we have open and transparent elections. I firmly believe that some changes have to be made to funding mechanisms for political parties during the RIC period, during elections. Now, money is important, and money, some will argue, is one way of voting. But the fact is that elections need to be fought on ideas, not on dollars. And you have to have the availability yourself to hear the ideas, to evaluate the ideas, and draw your own personal conclusion. If we have a process that allows for that to happen, if we keep on electing our party for the next 100 years, there's nothing wrong with that. As long as we know that the process isn't fixed in any particular way.
Thank you.
All right, excellent, thank you. We're gonna go Rob, and then we'll go Peter.
Hello, I'm Rob Warnock, and it's a pleasure to hear you speak about AOSTRA, because it's true, it was a very good, successful project and initiative by industry and the Alberta government. Unfortunately, what's happened since AOSTRA is a lot of times the Alberta government has looked and said, look how good AOSTRA is and how well it turned out, and then they started investing in some other really good ideas, just like AOSTRA, and it's going to be successful, except mostly it didn't turn out successful. Even fairly recently, carbon capture and storage was supposed to be another AOSTRA kind of thing, kind of never did. Well, what the hang was it about AOSTRA, really, that made AOSTRA win? And a lot of failures based on what supposedly was the same model. I have a theory that maybe has something to do with, 43 years ago, what I was doing was working for AOSTRA. And maybe that might be a clue, but probably doesn't count very much. Still, the question remains, how do we know when we go and the government gets involved in business that they're going to create something like an AOSTRA and say, hey, we use the AOSTRA model, but we've used so many times before, and it hasn't worked.
Good question. But if I can make two comments, because you mentioned carbon capture and storage, and I think that's an important thing to talk about as well. I think what made AOSTRA work well then is the fact that AOSTRA was introduced in collaboration with private sector. It wasn't the case where government came out and said, we have a brilliant idea and you will work with us. Government came out and said, let's develop a brilliant idea together within which confines you will be comfortable operating, and then let's implement it together. And it was a living document. IOSTRA was changing with time as production levels increased, different players entered the market, became more competitive, government started pulling out and allowing private sector to fully take over. So it will never work, and I know you're referring to a number of projects that happened where government came out with a brilliant idea. It may have seemed brilliant, academically speaking, on a drawing board, but industry simply, for one reason or another, either chose not to or could not play within the confines of the program. So whatever that next IOSTRA will be, whether it's agriculture, bio-research, or whatever it is that you think of, it has to be developed jointly with industry that will be participating in it. They have to be at the drawing board. And since IOSTRA, we haven't done that. We tried many things, but we have never really worked in collaboration with those who actually will be investing into that program. So that could be one. And if you're still available for employment.
Oh, yeah.
Perfect. Now, carbon capture and storage is quite interesting because there are critics that will say that this is nothing but an experiment. And I don't know if I would agree with that for a couple of reasons. We know that Shell, for example, is very enthusiastic about carbon capture and storage, and back home in Holland, they're actually getting into the business of agriculture right now because of carbon capture and storage. What they do is the stored carbon that they have in caverns, they now extract it, they pump it into greenhouses. They use the excess heat that they have, and all you have missing is light, and you have an operational greenhouse. And greenhouse industry right now is just flourishing over there because of the fact that they're using that feedstock, carbon, as a feedstock for growing plants. So that's just one industry. That could be a feedstock for many other industries moving forward. But the most important importance of carbon capture and storage is that it is one of the major variables that will allow us to achieve our self-imposed 2020 environment targets. We have self-imposed targets on ourselves. The report card is coming in 2020. And two major initiatives that will allow us to reach our own targets is carbon capture and storage, and the other one is the carbon levies that we now impose over 100,000 megatons of emission, and those dollars stay in Alberta for research, development, and commercialization of new environment and energy-based technologies. If we were to drop one of those two or both, it is right now guaranteed that we will not meet our 2020 targets. And that is a serious dilemma, because we're living in a world where, as don't like that term, if you know of a better one, let me know, but where social license is pivotal for our products, where our consumer base is very, very critical and very discriminate in where they buy their products from. If we come out in 2020 not having met our own self-imposed targets, if you think we're having a hard time building pipelines now, and selling and accessing our products to new markets, wait what happens in 2020. So whether we now think that it was a good idea or not, the fact is that we're pretty well hooked on it if we want to meet those targets. And I don't believe we can afford to miss our 2020 targets. So my proposal to Albertans is, since we've already invested and we have the trunk lines running all over the province, and we're capturing and storing carbon underground, let's make lemons out of lemonade and use it as a feedstock for industries that we could develop in this province. And greenhouse industry is just one where carbon could be used as a feedstock material.
All right, thank you.
One quick response, if I may. Another thing you might want to look at as the success of IOSTRA was that Alberta brought a massive asset to the table, whereas in a lot of the ones that failed, we didn't. The asset that we brought to the table was the Alberta Energy Resources Conservation Board. Mm-hmm. That when we said we're going to do IOSTRA, we know how to handle data.
That's right.
And they brought that to the table. And a lot of the other projects that didn't go well,
you're right,
Alberta didn't bring anything really to the table except they got a good idea.
You're right.
All right, thanks.
Yeah,
You're starting to
you're
sound
right.
like a real conservative there, Rob. We're going to go